every time we go out in the field, they're expected to give everything they got. They tap in before they go out. They make a commitment that they're going to be all in, and then the coaches have to make sure we drive the energy. And so if I'm expecting that, then I got to do that too.
What's good, Raider Nation? Welcome back to Vegas Nation. First and 10, your weekly go-to for Raider news, analysis, and commentary. Before I get to my great co-host, Ed Graney, to my right, I want to remind everybody that Vegas Nation podcasts, all Vegas Nation podcasts, including First and 10, are brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports. I am Vinny Bonsignore. I cover the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. And of course, Ed Graney is the great columnist for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. And Ed, that's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap on the Raiders' off-season program.
Yeah.
They literally just got off the field not too long ago.
Family Day,
absolutely.
A lot of kids and wives and girlfriends and
yes,
everybody.
Including Alex Kappa's son, who
we saw him.
Might be on our side of things.
He made his debut.
His broadcasting debut, and he's off and running without question. He's probably going to be replacing us at some point down the road. But it is a wrap on the Raiders off-season program, and they concluded their 3-day minicamp today at their practice facility here in Henderson. And I felt like among the practices that we got a chance to see in OTAs in these last 3 days in Henderson, saw some progress with the Raiders. And I guess right off the top, what were your impressions of what you saw?
I thought actually a lot of guys got better as the week went on.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, first day of minicamp, you're going to see a little sloppiness, but I thought today, the third day, you really saw a lot of more crispness in execution and in certain guys. I know there are certain guys we can talk about on both sides of the ball, but, look, they're putting in new schemes. That takes a while to get it up to par and up to what I think Pete Carroll wants and his coordinators want. But that now it's up to them to take what they've learned, go into the next 6 weeks.
Right.
Pete Carroll said he wants them to come back the best shape of their lives. And the thing I like mostly about Pete Carroll is he never stops talking about competition.
Yeah.
I mean, people asked about Jeanty, and he said competition.
Right.
I mean, obviously Ashton Jeanty, 6th pick overall, presumed number 1 running back, but he never stops talking about competition, and I think that's a healthy thing.
Yeah, and speaking along those lines about competition, the Raiders team, and I wrote about this, that he just said goodbye to, is not going to look like the team that he welcomes back in the middle of July or whenever that is that they open training camp. They agreed to terms. This goes part and parcel with the competition. They agreed to terms with veteran linebacker Jermaine Pratt. He'll be out on the field come training camp, another cog in this operation. But we lose sight of the fact sometimes that as players are learning new systems and all that good stuff, the coaches are learning their team, and sometimes they're going to figure out, hey, we probably need to add something. And Jeremy Pratt kind of landed in their lap a little bit after getting released by the Bengals. Real quick before we get to players that we did watch, that's a sneaky, nice little move for the Raiders to add somebody with that kind of production.
Yeah, 2022 was his best year. He was 12th by Pro Football Focus. The other years, his Pro Football Focus numbers weren't great, but he's played a lot of football. Mm-hmm. He's had a lot of tackles. Look, they needed to address the linebacker room. I think we both agree with that. I think linebacker and cornerback are two probably positions they'll continue to look at. Corner now, they'll continue to look at to bring guys in, and it goes back to the competition aspect of you bring people in to compete at spots where you might not be as depth-wise as good as you are other spots. So, you bring in a guy who's, like I said, he's played a lot of ball, has had a lot of tackles, and he's at a position of need.
Yeah, he is. And here's Pete Carroll talking about the addition of Jermaine Pratt.
He's a really hard-nosed kid, tough kid, played a lot of football, has been really healthy, has played all of the positions to give us a flexibility that really will help us. So I was really pleased that Johnny was able to get that done.
All right, so we'll get our first look at Jermaine Pratt in July when the Raiders reconvene for training camp. But a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, and I brought this up with Pete Carroll. I brought it up with Chip Kelly during OTAs, and something that I keep jotting down in the notebook and recognizing. Obviously, we talk about Geno Smith, we talk about Brock Bowers, we talk about Ashton Jeanty, the kind of the star players of this offense. Certainly, Jacoby Myers, but a guy that caught my eye throughout this phase was tight end Michael Mayer. Quite honestly. Not throwing anybody under the bus that was here previously, but I can understand how those coaches didn't get more out of Michael Mayer. This is a guy that was a highly productive player in college, and despite like week after week, need to get Michael Mayer more involved. Need to get
They
Michael,
kept saying it never really happened.
which was mind-boggling to me. Well, at least in our viewership of these practices, it's pretty obvious that they're trying. They're not just saying need to figure out a way. They are figuring out a way. He got a lot of touches during OTAs, and Pete Carroll talked about the great offseason that Michael Mayer had, and I think that's showing on the field. What kind of player can the Raiders maybe expect now from Michael Mayer?
Well, the good part about Michael Mayer, and Pete talked about it today when he said he was at a great camp, is he's completely bought in. And we know last year Michael had to step away from the team for personal reasons for a while. But Pete talked about it today in terms of the first thing they did was sit down with Michael Mayer and explain the expectations of Michael Mayer. And he's obviously bought in because he had a great camp. And that's part of, I think, a great step forward for him to buy into what Pete Carroll is selling and to be a productive player, which I think we both know he can be if given the opportunity. Had a couple touchdowns that were really nice. I know one yesterday was really nice. He split the safeties, and Gino hit him for a touchdown. I also think you're right in terms of they made an attempt to get him the ball more in this camp. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, the buy-in appears to be there, and Pete said that they sat down with him and they explained everything about this is what we expect from you. And, you know, so far, like Pete said, he's had a great camp. He had a great offseason.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if that didn't carry over into the regular season. And it's not just, throw Michael Mayer, some scraps. I think Chip Kelly realized this is a pretty good football player, and it behooves them to get him the ball. Another guy that really jumped out to me, and Pete talked about Dante Thornton as well, the young wide receiver from Tennessee. He was getting a lot of run with the first group. Now, there's going to be a lot of iterations of that first group. You're going to see the Raiders in 12 personnel, 13 personnel, where there's just one wide receiver. But there were plenty of times where when you're talking about the first-team offense with the first-team quarterback, Dante Thornton was out there catching some touchdown passes, made a nice catch today on a throw by Geno Smith. It just feels like he feels like he's a little bit further along than maybe what we suspected coming out of Tennessee when he was kind of a one-trick pony at Tennessee.
And I think also you can make the argument that they also made a concerted effort to get him involved in this camp, to see their rookies, to see what they have and guys they took in the draft, and he was happy with all. Pete Carroll was happy with all of those guys. So I do think they wanted to see as much as they could out of him. And I think they got a good feel for what he can do. And again, like you said, and Raheem Mostert talked to us, and one of the points he made was the more you can do in this league, the better chance you have to stay.
Right.
So you don't want to be, like you said, the one-trick pony. You want to be able to be a full wide receiver and all-around wide receiver.
Right.
And I think you get Jacoby Myers and others that can talk to you and teach you the position at the NFL level. That's really important.
Right. And Pete said something really interesting about that is trying to, I think he said, celebrate what guys can do right now with your young players and not ask them to do things beyond that yet. Down the road, that will probably be the case.
They'll have to.
But and this is kind of part and parcel with the experience I think that Pete Carroll brings, and having done this time and time and time again. The full expectation, and he let the cat out of the bag today when we talked to him. He wants these players to be big-time players by the end of the season, by a certain point in the season.
Right.
But to get there, you have to have a starting point right now, and part of that includes trying to figure out what they do well and accentuate that right now, and then build from there. So when you're talking about Jack Bech, the other young wide receiver from TCU, second-round pick, you're talking about Dante Thornton. I think Ashton Jeanty is going to be ready to go immediately, like if not right now.
Well, I think they believe he will be too.
Without question. And maybe running back is probably the easiest position, and not to take anything away from running backs, but to acclimate yourself as a rookie as opposed to wide receiver and other positions. But I do think you're going to see both of the young wide receivers, Thornton and Bech, have a role early, and then wouldn't be surprised later on down the season if those guys blossomed into much even bigger roles as the season goes on.
Yeah, and I think that would only behoove good things for the Raiders. You know about Brock Bowers, you know about Jacoby Myers. Now we've talked about Michael Mayer, we talked about Ashton Jeanty. But yeah, if you can get even more weapons to produce, the better chance you have of moving the ball down the field and messing with defenses and making defenses probably defend more than they prefer. So it'll be interesting. It's interesting in that it's football, but it's not football yet.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the interesting part will be when these guys come back, when pads go on. Now let's see what the rookies have, what the rookies can do when the pads go on and they're facing defense with the pads, and it's real football.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And when I watch tape of Jack Besh, and when I see him out here, even though, like you said, you're not in pads, and so the physicality is a little bit limited. But I feel like when the pads get on, it's when a guy like Jack Besh is going to shine even more.
And that happens a lot.
Yeah, because that's his game is physicality.
Right.
So it'll be interesting, like you said, to see it in real time when they do put the pads on, and he still has to respond to the challenges of the NFL.
Sure. And I think everyone's going to be really interested in how Ashton Jeanty responds with pads on. And when he's getting, hit around and Max Crosby's, coming at him and, Butler and these guys are filling holes and all of a sudden, he's getting, smacked around a little. I think people will really be interested to see how Ashton Jeanty responds with pads on. All of them.
Yeah.
It's much better, even people who cover the team like we do, when time comes in training camp, they say, hey, tomorrow's the first day of pads, you get a little excited because you're like, okay, you're going to actually see these guys now play real football and like you said, whether it's Besh or whoever, who responds and who doesn't.
Yeah, and having watched Ashton a lot because we're here in Las
Mountain
Vegas,
West, yes,
I have a
Mountain West.
feeling he's going to bring some physicality. They're going to
Yes.
be a little bit surprised on the other side of the ball. You see it on tape, but he's a pretty physical running back himself. That'll be really interesting. Well, to your point about who responds and who doesn't when the pads come on, I can remember last year when the pads did come on. Literally that day when the
Right.
pads came on for the first time, a guy that really passed that test to me was a guy by the name of DJ Glaze. And who knew at that point what that was going to end up becoming
Right.
for DJ Glaze? But you got a glimpse of it day one of training camp when they finally put the pads on. And he more than held his own, getting thrown into the fire when Thayer Munderford had to leave the field with a hand injury. Well, fast forward a few months later, and this is a guy that solidified himself as the Raiders' starting right tackle. And by the sounds of it, talking to Pete Carroll, he's picked up right where he left off and really caught the eye of the veteran coach.
Yeah, and there's another guy, DJ Glaze and Jackson Powers Johnson, these guys who came in as rookies who had some down times because they were rookies who had to learn on the job. And that's not easy in the league when you come in. I mean, it's so physical, and you think you're physical because you've dominated in college. All these guys have dominated in college, and then you come in here, and it's completely different on a weekly basis on who you're facing on the other side. But we talked to DJ Glaze today. He seems fired up, and he also seems like a guy who has improved and knew he had to improve to get to the level he wants to be at.
Yeah, he's your prototypical smart, low-key offensive lineman. Right?
Yeah,
we've seen that so many times, and which is perfect, exactly what you need. So we'll see as he now goes into year two how far he can take it. And with that, we're going to send things over to our weekly feature with Chuck Esposito, the race and sportsbook director over at Station Casinos STN Sports. He's going to talk about things in the gaming world. Here we go, Chuck.
It's hot outside, but it's hot when it comes to football talk. There's so much on the board right now. We know teams have gone through kind of OTAs, and there's still some free agency movement out there. We saw a couple of running backs, big name running backs of Nick Chubb and Dobbins actually get signed over the past week. So teams are still kind of fine tuning some things. What ultimately will happen with Trey Hendrickson. So it's kind of a fun time for us. I mean, it's a slower time in the summer. You have baseball, NBA finals, NHL finals. But it's always great to talk football. We know that Pete Carroll's won a Super Bowl. His enthusiasm is infectious. He inherits a team that has some really talented young skill position players with Brock Bowers now and, of course, Jeanty. So I think everyone's excited to see what he can do. Unfortunately, they do play in a really tough division. You've got, of course, Patrick Mahomes. You've got Justin Herbert. You've got Bo Nix. You've got coaches in that league. Jim Harbaugh has won a national championship. Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl. We know Andy Reid's won a Super Bowl. But Pete Carroll's won one as well. So I think when you look at the coaching hierarchy in the AFC West, it is great. I think everyone's really anxious to see what Pete Carroll does. But we continue to see over money on the Raiders' win total. So I think that's a positive sign that the guests are buying in right now and really anxious to see what Pete Carroll and this version of the Raiders will do. So get on the app. It's such a great time to have STN Sports because there's so much on it. You look at the both the basketball finals and the hockey finals. There are so many props and so many different ways to bet the game. The live wagering aspect of it. Same thing with baseball. The baseball games going on at the U.S. Open as well. We'll be adjusting odds after each round. People are looking for value there, and the live aspect has become such a large part of what we have to offer. Check that out, especially in the golf. For a golf major, it is pretty cool. So again, it's hot outside, but we know how cool SDN Sports is. So get signed up for the app today.
Our thanks again to Chuck Esposito, the Race and Sportsbook Director of Station Casinos, STN Sports. All right, Ed, a little bit of a break. It's probably going to go by in the blink.
It'll go by fast. It'll go by fast.
It will go by fast. July.
And it will be hot while it's going by fast.
It is. Let's talk about that a little bit. It was hot.
It was toasty.
It was toasty. The Raiders
Yeah.
started practice at 10:30
Yep.
during minicamp and OTAs. I do not believe that's going to be the case in training
Right.
camp. I would figure on 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning. You do the best you can.
Sure.
You do the
Yeah,
best. By the
I
way,
mean,
did
it
you
is
see
what it
the
is.
Chargers are going to San Diego for 2 days? Training camp?
USD, I think.
Yes.
Where Jim Harbaugh was the coach. I interviewed him as the USD coach many years ago.
Did a very good job there, by the way. I think
Jim
10-0.
Harbaugh did a really good job. Yeah,
That's how he
did a
ended
really
up
good job
getting
at
the
USD.
Stanford job.
Yeah.
So no California this training camp for the Raiders. The Chargers are going down to San Diego. I always felt like the Raiders should do that. Go down
All
to
the
San
time.
Diego for training camp. Yep. I don't know if that's no longer a possibility. Maybe next year they'll be able to close the deal on Napa. But I think Pete saw what he saw during minicamp and
Right.
felt what he felt in minicamp and said, yeah, we're probably going to have to do something about the starting time for practices. But there's really no getting around that.
No, it's going to be hot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hot now. It's going to be hotter in July, and they'll get through it. I mean, a lot of these guys played in humid temperatures and weathers wherever they played in college, and a lot of them are used to stuff like that. And they're professional athletes. They're like I said, he wants them coming back to the best shape in their life. If they come back in the best shape of their life, it shouldn't be that much of a deal.
Shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be that much of a deal. All right, so what are your last final thoughts of what you saw from the Raiders over these last few weeks?
I mean, again, I think, because, you're dealing with new schemes, new players, new coaches. The one thing I really liked was Pete Carroll and his staff were intent on getting the most out of these guys. And we saw it, in warm-ups, going over and Pete, running around and high-fiving. A lot of that people could say, well, that's just rah-rah stuff and everything like that. But I do think there's an intent on his part and his staff's part to get the most out of these players.
Yeah, and I second that. And I'll also say this. There were times in the past where the Raiders took the last day of minicamp off. Hey, that's fine. I didn't necessarily think that they were where they needed to be to do that.
Right.
To waste any opportunity to get better. But it is what it is. Pete Carroll is not wired that way. I think
No, they went long today, actually.
They actually went longer.
They went longer than they did the first 2 days.
Than shorter.
Yes.
Or just eliminating it altogether. And I kind of think that's there may come a time down the road when Pete Carroll is still the head coach where that third day is taken off. And this is not anything like we saw those guys. They were working hard during camp. I didn't feel like there was anybody was letting up the gas. I just don't think that he thinks that his football team is there yet, and or in any kind of a position to waste any opportunity,
Right.
potential opportunity
Right.
to get better. So where others may have cut practice as a reward,
did not.
He didn't do that, and I
Right.
think that's kind of a sign of who he is and what this Raider team can expect.
Well, you make the best point in that I don't think he thinks they're near where they're at and where he thinks they're going to be.
Right.
Because so much is new. So if this was a staff that had been around 3 or 4 years, they had implemented everything, maybe then you take the third day off.
Right.
But this is not that. This is a brand new in a lot of ways, and like you said, I don't think you want to, knowing you're going to lose them for 6 weeks now, I don't think you want to give up any time you have mandated by the rules that you can practice.
Right, and this is how I'll end it because he made it a point today. They're not interested in incremental positive moves forward. They want to win. He made it pretty clear that
He made it clear that he doesn't even think about anything other than winning every game. He doesn't think about rebuilds. He doesn't think about any of that. He goes, I can't even think in those terms.
Right, and I think that's a healthy way to look at it. It might even be a little bit of a departure from around here over the last few years. And look, it'll be on him to assess whatever happens this year, whether that was progress or
Right.
not. But why would you even entertain the thought of doesn't matter if we win or lose right now. Just show let's. If you're Pete Carroll, you want to see this team reach its ceiling in every way possible. Determine what the ceiling is down the line, or whether or not you reached it. But don't set a ceiling. Just say trying to win as many games as possible right now. That's in his eyes what progress is all about. Interesting take from the veteran.
Yep, exactly. And no matter what internally is said or thought of, the message you have to give to the players is the one you just said.
Yeah.
You have to give that. If you're not giving that message, then I don't know what you're talking about.
I completely agree. All right, so the Raiders have wrapped up their off-season program today at Minicamp. We haven't wrapped up anything, have we?
No, not
We'll
at all.
still be here every week talking about the Raiders and potential news. I'm sure there's going to be some tinkering of the roster, but we're going to be here for you every step of the way, even when they're not out on the field, getting you geared up for training camp and getting you geared up for the regular season. We appreciate all of your support. Thank you so much. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for hitting the like button. Please tell your friends about Vegas Nation, whether you want to read us online, whether you want to buy the print version, whether you want to watch the videos or take a look at the photo essays that we do. Read Ed's great columns and Adam Hill's great work, and you know what I put out there. We appreciate you. Tell all your friends. This is your one stop for Raider news and analysis, and we're proud to do that. We're proud to provide that for you. Thank you so much. Until next week, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the rest of enjoy the closure of the off season, and get ready and get excited for training camp next month.